In today's episode, we're going to talk about failure and all of the things surrounding it. Let's get into it. All right, welcome to another episode of the Upgrade My Rituals podcast. This is a live video series that's going to be happening on YouTube exclusively. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through a lot of things that we can engage with. So hopefully you can jump in and engage with us. Ask some questions, we'll go back and forth. And if you're watching this on the replay, that's cool too. Please leave a comment. And today we're going to talk about failure. So if you're watching this is the show for the professionals, the productivity junkies, the solopreneurs, business owners, people who are looking to get that edge and that little bit more productive through designing an ideal perfect day. This day where if we even come close to hitting it, we put our head on the pillow at the end of the night and we feel great about what we did and where we're going. So that's ultimately done through a few different tactics, one being ritual design, which is my system of daily routine design throughout your day. And a lot of times when we try to develop these routines, we fail, right? We absolutely fail. We try different iterations and it just doesn't work out. So what can we do to deal with failure? Because there is a lot that happens both tactically and emotionally when you fail at something. So where do we begin, right? Because a lot of times when we fail at whatever it is, whether it's a routine, an exercise, a diet, a new career, we have so many things that go on in our head and in other people's heads too. So we have to try to be cognizant of what's happening and then what we're going to do about it, right? So we're going to go through a couple different things. Ultimately, let's figure out the definition. And just do me a favor, one of my first few times going live with this setup. So if I'm looking over at this monitor, I'm just kind of doing a couple of things and checking out some stuff. So let's talk about what failure actually is, the expectations behind failure. And that's exactly what it is, right? It's the expectation that you have of an outcome. That's the definition of a failure. More aptly, not meeting that expectation. So when you think that you're going to transition into a new career, cool. You think that will take a year. You have to do some type of education, some type of schooling, some type of certification. It might take 6 months. And then you're going to be job hunting. You're going to be, putting out resumes. You're going to be a whole bunch of things like that. And then it's like 3 years in and you start asking yourself, oh no, did I make a huge mistake? Did I burn my bridges and now I'm trying to navigate this situation and I don't know when this is going to happen. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should have just stuck to my old career. Whatever it may be, there's a lot of things that you start, these stories that you start kind of telling yourself, and that can go down a very slippery road. So speaking of story, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and specifically about career, and how I don't even want to say failure because we'll get into what that looked like, but I'll explain. Ever since I was in 9th grade, I knew I wanted to do something in music. I knew. And by my junior year, I kind of had a feeling that I wanted to be a music teacher. And the reason I had that feeling was because a lot of people said, well, being a musician's hard. It's a really hard life and there's no security and da-da-da. I love security, right? And a lot of these different things. And they said, oh, the benefits and you get summers off and all these perks. And I said, yeah, I mean, I actually liked teaching. I didn't think I liked it. So I set my eyes on being a high school band director. I was sure that that was my dream and my passion and what I was going to do. And I went to college. I did my master's abroad at the Liège Conservatory. I did all these things, and I started down this path, and I definitely failed by the standards of what people would consider a failure, by not getting tenure at a position and trying to land another position and subbing and just kind of floating around and just not having any luck really landing a job that was going to be my home. So that ultimately could have been a failure, but at the last moment, it was about 2015, I was transitioning into the world of personal development and operating a business, and I was still actually subbing. And there was an opening that was happening in that district. And they were like, it was kind of like the next, I was right there. I was the permanent sub for music. And I probably could have walked into that position, but I made the conscious decision to say, no, I'm done. It's been almost 15 years of deciding on something, going one direction, and not necessarily having it be successful. Now, granted, 8 of those years was high school and college, but still, that was my direction, right? So it's interesting because that brings me to the point revolved around the takeaway for today's episode is that failure is only failure when you actually stop trying. So I know that sounds really kind of cheesy and ridiculous, because if you mess up something, you fail. And if you don't do this and don't do that, you fail. If I kept trying for the next 20 years to be a high school band director, I probably could have done it, right? It probably would have happened. I almost know for a fact it would have happened, because there's first of all, it only takes a lifetime to to actually make something happen, make one thing happen. I also know, because I've had a lot of people that are in the music world that were trying to root for me and push for me, where I made the decision 2 years ago. I was like, I am done with this. I can't do it anymore. And that is proof that we are live, folks. So I made the decision that, I was done, and I obviously stopped, but failure is only failure if you stop. Now, perfect example with Upgrade. This is not the first business endeavor that I've had. This is actually technically the second, kind of the third though, right? Because I started in physical products for musicians, for selling music accessories. And that actually was really, really great. Now, here's my next part and next discovery about failure that I want you to take away from today's episode, is that it's the worst when you achieve what you set out to do and you realize that's actually not what you wanted. Now that is, again, if you stop there and never continue, that's a failure. That is one of the worst type of failures that you can experience. For me, I was selling music accessories on Amazon specifically, and I was doing a bang up job. My first quarter, I did 30 grand in top line revenue. And for out of the gate, I mean, that was really good with just two products. I was really happy with that. And then I knew my ultimate goal, and I realized I was so blind to what I was doing that I just was trying to do something to make money. And it worked, but that wasn't what was going to sustain me forever. Considering that maybe 6 months later, after I decided that, okay, this physical product avenue is not going to work for me, 6 months later, a lot of the different manufacturers overseas started getting involved in selling on, on Amazon, and they were selling on Amazon what they were selling it for me at cost. So it was never going to work unless I built this huge brand around physical products. Not what I wanted to do. So then ultimately I went into, use my roots as a teacher, and I went into online education, and this kind of what has led me to here and teaching you guys ritual design, teaching you about productivity through daily design, if you will, which is what I love. And this is something that I will be doing forever because I've spent my whole life figuring out what I want to do. Either way, I digress. Failure is a couple of things. Like I said, it's really important to know that it is only a failure if you actually stop trying. Because ultimately, when they talk about that cliche, I think it was Edison who invented the light bulb. How many times did he try to? It was 999 times, whatever, ways to not invent the light bulb that he figured out. It only took that one. But if he stopped at 800 or 8,000, whatever the number was, then would be pretty dark here. So my point is, you have to keep going. And I know that sounds so cliche and positive thinky and stuff, but you have to just keep going with iterating. You have to iterate, and failure is a great indicator on what you're doing and what needs to change. If you just say, oh, this didn't work, and use that as an excuse because of those negative thoughts that you have, then you're never going to get anywhere, right? And ultimately, be cognizant of where you're going and what direction you're going, because if you hit your goal and you realize that's not the goal you wanted, then that's the worst type of failure, as I've already talked about. Now, to end out today's episode, we're going to talk about goal setting, because ultimately, setting your goals properly at this time of year is really important. We have a few more weeks left of 2021 and off into 2022. So this is a time people are reflecting. This is a time people are looking at, what they want to have happen for the next year. And for the most of the people that are probably not, you're probably not one of these people because you're watching the show. So you're already in a category where you understand that a New Year's resolution is kind of silly. I want to feel better and I want to lose some weight. That's not a proper way to set a goal, right? One of the ways that I teach in my program Day by Design is we teach the SMART-ER framework. Now, I know you've probably heard of SMART goals. You've probably even heard of SMARTER goals, but this is a little bit different. The ER, which I'm not going to get into all the details, but the ER stands for evaluate and revise. So this is exactly when you fail at something, the ER of your SMARTER goal is really going to help you out, because you're going to evaluate what went wrong and then revise it. And it's as simple as that. So ultimately, that's kind of what I would suggest moving forward that you do, is that you have to really set an intentional goal for the next year. And if you don't hit it, you have to look at it, evaluate and revise it, and figure out what went wrong and what direction you're taking. If you stop, then that's a failure, right? Don't stop. Just keep going. So if you haven't done so already, I would love you to subscribe to the show here on YouTube. And this was supposed to come up with a cool little graphic, but it is not working for some reason. I know why, because I have to do that. There we go. And that should work, but I don't see it working. But either way, you're supposed to have a little cool graphic for subscribing. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are, are watching this and you do like the audio format, these won't be on the podcast, but you can ultimately subscribe and get the weekly Thursday episodes on the podcast, but on YouTube is where you want to be. So thank you so much for being here. You're going to get live videos like this as well as the podcast episodes. If you like this, hit thumbs up and definitely leave a comment below. Tell me your biggest failure and a way that you can go about it and maybe change it and keep going, right? So thank you so much once again. I really, really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.